It's fish!
Hi there, pardon me. Thanks for nothing, fellas. That was a pretty close one. Almost bought the farm back there. It's actually a miracle that I got away with it this time.
I found him! Over there!
Perfect shot.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Danny here. Today I'm talking to you about Trigun. Guys, we're finally here, man. Number 100 on the manga list. Been a long time coming. Been meaning to get to this a lot sooner, but things happen and here we are. When I first mentioned, I'm going to try to read 100 mangas in a year. And, it took a long time to get here, but one thing is I'm glad that I'm back on a weekly basis when it comes to this. And, just can't wait to check out the next 100. But in the meantime, I wanted to do a series that I really like. And here we are with Trigun. I love the anime. Movie is fantastic. This was like with Sailor Moon. I didn't know this had a manga, right? This was a manga first, then got adapted, right? I guess it's during that era where it's like, oh, I guess it really is just from a manga, right? Like Outlaw Star and Sailor Moon and just pretty much that era of anime. People our age discovered what anime was. Turns out it's from a manga. I remember talking to Miguel when he finally watched Trigun a few years back. He said, I liked it, but I think I'm going to check out the manga. I think there's something more here. I feel like there were things missing. And, after thinking about it, reminiscing of the anime, I think the anime was fine. It's solid for what it is. But, I was interested in checking out what this manga was, and I just never got to it. But seeing as episode 100 was coming up, I figured, you know what? Yeah, I should read this series. So that's what I did, man. So Trigun, written and drawn by one Yasuhiro Naito, and this was serialized in 1995 to 1997 in Shonen Captain magazine. I looked at this magazine and I didn't really recognize anything from it, and we'll explain why in a bit. Total of 22 chapters, 3 volumes in total. This was a monthly series, and checking it out, you can't help but compare it to what you already know of the series. I already know how the story plays out from the anime, and I'm trying to keep that as far back in my head as possible because I want to, read this story as it's intended, not as a comparison. And so far, yeah, I was really enjoying it. It definitely felt a little bit darker compared to the anime as far as, the humor wasn't really there for the most part. If we all remember Vash the Stampede, right? He's a lovable guy. Always cracking jokes when he can, but he can't get serious during the moment. And here, there really wasn't a lot of humor. I mean, towards the end, sure, but it was a lot less than I expected. So that definitely caught me by surprise. And, again, what is this, 1995 when the manga came out? Yeah, similar to Sailor Moon, this is probably just a little too much for the anime audience at the time. As far as it's too serious or it's too dark. I'm sure we all know the story for Trigun, but let's explain it real quick, man. Somewhere in space, way beyond the reaches of Earth, we have humanity in a futuristic Western, in a sense, right? It's a Western for the most part, but there are things in here that remind you that we're in the future, right? Like certain villains and people with guns, they just look so ridiculous. But it's like, but it's the future though, so of course this is how they look. And on this planet with all of these decrepit towns filled with sand, we have one man wandering the planet, Vash the Stampede, the humanoid typhoon, wanted with a bounty of $60 billion double dollars for the eradication of a city called July with the event known as Lost July. Through this, we see the world in his eyes as he's traveling around, trying to make friends with everybody in town and stopping any violence that comes towards him. And during this, we are introduced with Nicholas D. Wolfwood, a wandering priest that ends up tagging along with Vash, and then as well as Meryl and Millie, 2 agents from an insurance company that want to insure anything that happens with Vash the Stampede. During all of this, we discover Vash's backstory. We find out he has a brother named Millions Knives, and then the story unfolds from there that we all know and love. Now, there are certain differences in here that I really like compared to the anime. It makes more sense for sure when it comes to explaining certain things that happen, and really it takes a different direction when it comes to how our characters are, right? I already mentioned that Vash, he's not as humorous or goofy in this for the most part. And then, when it comes to our other main characters like Meryl and Millie, what they're doing in the story and like pretty much just like how long they're with Vash already is different. And that caught me by surprise. Typical standard stuff here. Everything that we know and love is here. The writing is solid, that's for sure. The pacing is set perfectly for a monthly series. It doesn't drag on too long, and it doesn't really feel like you're reading 27, 30 pages. The art is a nice compliment. It really can feel like a Western, though it is the mid-90s, so the art is a little mid-90s, I guess I could say. Eventually it grew on me, but then by the time it changed to what we can recognize it as, right, similar to the anime's art style, that's when it can really shine, man, because once he starts really getting into the art, it's amazing. Like, I can't praise it enough. All the build-up and the foreshadowing, the building of the world, our backstories with Vash particularly, really fantastic. The differences here that didn't make the cut in the anime is great too. It's some of my favorite stuff. Coming in, understanding what the story is, and then seeing what it originally was, it just kept me interested the entire time. Then I was like, oh, nice. This is how the story's supposed to unfold. That's interesting. It really kept me engaged because it kept my attention and it made me really want to see what's next. However, we're nearing chapter 22, which is the end of the manga. And as I'm reading and thinking, wait a minute, what's going on? I've watched the anime. I know how the story goes. I could see where we are here in the manga. I'm almost done, but we're not where the anime ended. What's going on? Was all of that filler? All these questions kept coming in my mind. Sure enough, we get to chapter 22, and it ends on a time skip cliffhanger, right? We don't see anything that happens after that. It's the big event that happens in the anime, like the big point for Vash and his character, which definitely plays differently, and a lot of things are, in a sense, misplaced. But for the most part, it's that pivotal moment, and I was just confused. I was like, why is it over? So, of course, doing what I do, looked it up, and to my surprise, Shonen Captain magazine shut down. All the mangas had to end, and that cut Trigun short. Ended in 1997, while the anime premiered in August of 98. And so I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe they did make everything else up, kind of do a Full Metal Alchemist thing. Turns out that is not the case, though. One Young King Hours magazine, another monthly magazine, decided to contact Yasuhiro and tell him, hey man, we love Trigun, why don't you come over here and continue your work? So thus now we are in Trigun Maximum, published in 1998 to 2008, with a whopping total of 102 chapters. Biggest surprise being it ended in 2008. That's crazy. For an anime from the mid-90s to end in 2008 for the manga. It's so crazy. This is where it gets really interesting. Right? What did I say? The anime premiered in August of 1998, but Trigun Maximum premiered July 1998, 1 month before the 26 episode anime aired. So what's going on? My best guess had to be that Yasuhiro worked with the anime staff, told them the key points into the story, because there was still a good amount of episodes left after the time skip in the anime. Aside from the recap episode, there was still a lot to cover all the way up to the end of the series. And my guess is Trigun got picked up, I would have to say 96, right? Because it ended in January of 97. And then I assume the unexpected closing of Shonen Captain magazine, with Yasuhiro deciding, well, there's still a lot more to tell, but the anime has to come out. And this is during the era where, like, an anime has to come out. Like, we can't really wait. There's no time for that in the anime industry. I figured, okay, he probably had to tell them key points that were very important to the story, and then he either helped them write it or they just wrote their own thing to fit a 26 episode structure. And that makes sense because a lot of people I saw ask, where's season 2 of Trigun? Can't really do a season 2 of Trigun because, the manga's not even close to being finished. And anime back then is not as anime is now. yeah, I mean, like looking at his anime staff positions for Trigun, it's just character design and original creator. So it's possible that he didn't really help. I don't know. It's something that I have to dig deeper into. But regardless, now this is where it gets interesting, right? When I was looking this stuff up for the differences between the manga and the anime, a lot of forums kept asking the question, what's the difference? And a lot of people that read it and watched it just replied, I mean, yeah, it's more or less the same. If you want more fleshed out scenarios, more character development, just more stuff overall, definitely read the manga. But overall, it's the same. That's what I kept seeing every time I would look up the differences. And after reading the remaining 102 chapters for the series, I have to say I have no idea what they're talking about. Did they even read the same manga? Did they even watch the anime? Because these two series really are nothing alike. The key points are similar for the most part, but buddy, the differences are insane. It's so crazy just to see the route that Yasuhiro decided to take with the manga. Incredible work, a really nice Western sci-fi. You know, it has a lot of dark tones, very serious moments, and just incredible artwork. And the direction, the scale just kept going up. The escalation was pretty crazy leading up to the final moments of the story. And the best part about it is it was written so well, none of it felt over the top. It didn't feel like, oh, he's really pushing it. That was the most impressive thing for me reading Trigun Maximum, was the writing. It's incredible. Now, there are some problems, sure. It mainly has to do with the ending, the final stretch of the last arc. It just took too long, in my opinion. So again, we're reading a monthly series. I already mentioned his pacing is great. It doesn't feel like you're reading a monthly series, right? Because you're so engaged and you can just really fly through the pages. The art really helps with that as well. But this final stretch was building up to something nice, right? We're at the final climax with Vash the Stampede and Million Knives, our hero versus this evil dictator in a sense. And we're at the moment, it's building up at the peak. We're really getting there. And then all of a sudden, we are interrupted by a new entity into the story, causing Vash and Knives to split up, and Knives focusing on something else, while Vash has to deal with stuff that didn't get finished in the series, pushing the brakes on this climax. And that bothered me a lot. It took me back, right? I took a step back and think, gosh, this was not what I was expecting, because this never happened in the manga so far. I mean, sure, right before this, there was, some stuff that really came in that was cliche and a little unexpected, but never this jarring with this interruption of this fight. And as I was reading, the pacing and everything felt the same, but I just felt it took longer to read because honestly, I didn't want to read it. I kept thinking, oh gosh, I just want to get back to the climax. I want to see how this resolves between these two brothers that turned enemies. So that's my only real problem with the writing. Other than that, though, I mean, everything else leading up to that was really solid, really fantastic. The way Yasuhiro fleshed out every single character that came in was fantastic. Again, there is minor problems. One of the main antagonists of the series here, that's a pivotal character in the anime, is Legato Blue Summers. And he is very different here in the manga, for sure. The base outline of his character is the same, but everything else in between that really fleshes him out is very different, and it was almost last minute with Yasuhiro to write in everything that explains about his character to get his backstory, fleshing him out. And that is a problem. I think what happened when he was writing the story is we're reaching the climax. And when I was reading it, actually, going through the volumes, I was like, wait, hold on. How many chapters do we have left? And I looked, I was like, ooh, this is a little worrying because there's this many chapters left, but we're about to be at the final boss. How are we going to flesh this out? And so Yasuhiro decides that, oh, wait, there's still stuff I want to finish writing, we have to throw it in now, which is unfortunate because for majority of the time with Legato, he really wasn't doing anything. He became a very minor character for a good portion of the series, which caught me by surprise because he was, a significant portion when it came to the anime. And to see him on the sidelines and, having his one-liners here and there whenever we would go to the area he was at. And then it's like all of a sudden, we're getting all this exposition. We're getting fleshed out parts, backstory with him. It almost came out of left field, and I wish that was just sprinkled out more. More conflict between him and Vash. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like all the gun-ho guns that showed up, right? There was definitely a good amount that didn't show up in the anime that were definitely interesting, and it was cool seeing the fights, but yeah, just more of him would have been great. But I have to say, man, my favorite stuff out of this entire series has to be with Vash the Stampede and Nicholas D. Wolfwood. Oh my god, this is the strongest point of the series, aside from all the moments we get with Million's Knives. That stuff is incredible as well. But just the way that he built up these two characters with their laughs, with their conflicts, arguments, butting heads constantly, but laughing at the same time. Really incredible stuff. And then just, we know what we know that happens in the anime. And like I said, key points still happen. So we know the key point with Wolfwood. And the way it happens in the manga was, I think, the best way you could have done it. There was no other way. I liked what they did in the anime, but in the manga, it was just a lot better. He's different in the manga as far as his motives go. And just seeing his character, turn around, come full circle, whatever it is, at the end, and then just seeing it all build up and getting paid off was the best part. Yasuhiro does a lot with that in here. Really good stuff. The exposition of the world, right? Fleshing out more stuff, the mysteries, slowly sprinkled throughout the manga to keep you invested into the sci-fi aspect of this Western, I thought was really nice. Especially when we get the flashback stuff with Vash and Knives. It's not all one arc. It's sprinkled throughout. And then we do get a few chapters here and there that touch on it. And, then we focus on the rest of the series. And then right when we're like, I kind of want more exposition about how we got here, about what the science is, boom, we get a little bit more. And that's what I really like. And you can tell in the beginning, like in the original run of Trigun in Shonen Captain, Vash mentions things that none of the characters would know and that we wouldn't know either, but that it keeps the suspense. And if you watch the anime, you already know what he's talking about. And you're like, oh, wow, he's talking about it here in chapter 3 when that happened in like episode 16 or what, whichever one that happened. That's crazy. And, it was here in Trigun Maximum where the humor started kicking back up. Right, Vash was acting way more goofy, especially with his arguments with Wolfwood. It was more comical than what we saw before. And part of me wants to say that could be influenced by the anime. Because at the time where Vash was being humorous, it was way past the time when the anime already came out. Right, because Maximum started the same year as the anime. So therefore, year 2 of the manga, the anime is over. So I feel like he probably did take some inspiration from there when it came to what was likable. I mean, I'm sure as well the editors probably told him like, hey man, people are coming here because of the anime and they're not seeing the same Vash. We have to kind of even it out. And he does it justice to where it's not a completely different character, but it's thrown in subtly, but he still feels the same. Even towards the end when it's all just straight up anime Vash, he still feels like it's the manga version. And that's cool, man. That's great. Solid story writing. And now moving on to probably one of my other favorite things with the manga is again the art style. Yeah, the original run definitely had its charm. It had the mid-90s feel, that's for sure. But once we got to Maximum, oh man, did the art really take a step for the best. One of the favorite things a lot of people have when it comes to Trigun is like the intro, right? Remember the intro for the anime and how cool and stoic Vash looked, how 90s it felt with with his red coat and like all the pieces like hanging in the air when he's rocking that I guess not blanket, like that cover that he wears during Lost July, and just the way it's all tethered at the end and the way it just flows in the air as he's standing on top of that cross in the middle of the desert. Like that aesthetic that's in Trigun is so good when it comes to the art. He has great positioning, and the choreography for majority of the time is fantastic when it comes to the fighting and just the expressions that we get there with our characters. You could definitely feel the emotion, the intensity during every scene that matters, especially when we get some nice spreads of what's going on. You know, there's definitely certain pieces where you could just feel everything that happened in the scene. You know, you understand what's going on in the chapter based on some of this stuff. It's really, really fantastic, man. I love this art. Now, the only downside to the art is with some of the fights, we're in this Western world with Trigun, and one of the things that stands out from the anime is the destruction of buildings, right? All these bullets are flying, there's so much particles in the air, and when it happens in the manga, the panels are average size, that's for sure, when it comes to some of it. And what does that mean? There's not enough space to really put it all in. And some of the fights you can definitely feel you get lost in because it just feels jumbled. There's too much going on. There's smoke, there's debris, bullets are flying, your character, like his face isn't there, he's moving around. It feels a little messy. But thankfully that's not happening all the time. So that's great. Aside from that, yeah, again, everything else I mentioned about the art is really fantastic. It's really good, man. Just to see what he could do during this era, amazing. It's all I can really say, man. I can't gush anything more about the art. Especially, oh my gosh, especially towards the end when it comes with knives and how insane it can get with what he was doing. Really interesting stuff, man, when it comes to Vash, to go back to the writing. He is an interesting character. Definitely he's more or less the same from the anime, but the way he gets there is definitely different, and where he ends is also very different. Gosh, when we finally got to that final showdown, it was great. You know, it really felt like some top tier final battles. One of the best, for sure. And I had ideas of how it was going to end. I had ideas of what the epilogue was going to be, and for the most part, I kind of got it right. But definitely stuff was a little different. I guess my final, it's not really it's a bummer rather than a disappointment with the ending, the final chapter, right? I don't know, it felt like it's one of those endings that is just, well, I mean, the story's over, but everything is more or less the same. I mean, things are definitely different from where we started as far as the world works now on this planet. And just seeing our characters interact for the final time in the series, it doesn't feel like they're moving on to the next chapter. It feels like, oh, we're just staying here where we've always been. Right? Like there's like normal epilogues when it comes to the series is always like, oh, we get to see shonen characters as adults, or we get to see what is going to be the next phase of their life, right? Like they're moving on from what they've normally done into something different. And here it didn't really feel like that. It's just the same antics, which, I mean, it's not horrible, but there was definitely moments, right? Especially, if we're talking Vash with Meryl, nothing gets fleshed out, unfortunately. And maybe that's just Yasuhiro's viewing on how an ending should be, maybe not really kind of have that stuff play out at the end. But it's definitely more apparent here than the anime between those two characters and their relationship, at least as far as emotions go between Vash and Meryl. I think other than that, man, what am I trying to say here? I really, really loved this manga. It makes me, I appreciate the anime for what it is. I still like it. I still have it here on my shelf. But, I can't help but looking at the anime and thinking, gosh, man, I want to take two so bad now. I want them to redo Trigun and really, really do it. Because like I said with Sailor Moon a while back, right, I think the anime industry is ready for a story like that, 1-to-1. And I think it's definitely ready for Trigun 1-to-1. You know, it's going to take a long time though, right? It's not going to be a 2-season thing. It's got to be at least 3 or 4. So it would take a while, but man, oh man, would it be so worth it to see this story animated, especially at the end where the action is incredibly high. Some really stellar moments, final moments with characters, backstories that caught me by surprise, and just the exploration of the sci-fi aspect while keeping it a Western at the same time, right? Having these two different genres in unison with each other was really great. And another thing is also, I mentioned earlier during the Vash and Knives final fight, there was a new entity into the story, and that kind of drags on for me. But I will say, even though it distracted and prolonged the ending, it didn't feel like it did not belong in the series, right? I figured it was going to happen much later, or even just the final chapter. That's what usually happens. But seeing it here in the story and have it integrate almost naturally, right? Like you don't even question what's going on. And I have to just give Yasuhiro props again for the writing on that part, because it definitely changed a lot towards the end, but it all played out well. So kudos to him, man. So yes, guys, I highly recommend you read Trigun and Trigun Maximum. I had an incredible time reading this. I did not want to put it down. It kept me so engaged throughout the whole thing, you know, and it wasn't until about halfway into Maximum when I was like, wait, oh, this is a monthly manga. I assumed it was weekly, because once I got to the final chapter, it said 2008. I was like, whoa, buddy, 2008? Oh, I guess, yeah, because 100 chapters, and it just all clicked. But I was like, wow, I felt like this could have been like a 4-year run. But no, it was like, well, Maximum's a 10-year run, but with the main series that started in 95, that is, a 13-year run? So maybe in 2 years or in 7 years, whenever the next anniversary is. So either way, I feel like we're almost at the appropriate time for another shot at this. I mean, like I said before in the Air Gear episode, if Shaman King can get a remake for their anime, if Bleach can finally have the final arc animated for its anniversary, there's definitely plenty of other series that deserve another chance, and I think Trigun should be on the top of that list. Really incredible. Go read it. If you're a Trigun fan, I think you owe it to yourself to read this, and you're definitely going to be fascinated and invested into the manga when you start it. Because most of the time I was thinking, I was so involved because I wanted to see the differences, and it wasn't even the differences, but I wanted to see the in-betweens as well, right? Like, oh, well, what happens that we don't see in the anime? That's what really kept me interested, and it's totally worth the time, man. There is a compilation book that came out not that long ago, or I say not that long ago, but a few years after Maximum, called Trigun Multiple Bullets, and it's a bunch of one-shots that is within the Trigun story, and I looked it up, and apparently it is canon, and I've skimmed it before because I know Boichi did one, so I will be coming back for a part 2 and talking about that. Can't wait to check it out, because I think Yasuhiro also wrote another short story, so I'm interested to see how all that's going to fit. And, you know, I will say Badland Rumbles, the movie, I feel like it could fit in the manga world, you know, but it has to take place at a certain time, because there's a period where, oh yeah, there's no way the anime would have done this at all. And it wasn't even hinted at. So I appreciate the anime. I enjoyed the movie. Absolutely love this manga. So that's all we have to say today, guys. I hope you enjoy this when you read it, or if you have already read it, send us an email, man. We'd love to keep talking about this. I could talk about it all day. So you can email us universepodcast@gmail.com if you want to do that. And of course, I'll bring it up on the next episode. And while we wait for future episodes, you can follow us on social media anywhere you go at Unverse Podcast. So thanks, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.